Hey everybody, welcome back to the shop and playtime with Sparky. So I thought last video was pretty well received and pretty easy to make, so I thought I'd just sort of carry on, continue to do some exploration. There's some things we haven't looked at, like fluids. We haven't looked at any of the brakes. I got some more information on the carburetor, and I got some parts and some ideas. Maybe we'll even check out what's going on with the fuel gauge. So here we go. All right, let's start with the carburetor here. So the first thing I had to do was figure out where the magic numbers were, and they're right here. They're on the driver's side front of this particular carburetor, and you can look those up online, and what you come up with, as anybody who knows anything about Holleys, is this is a 4160, and that's my interpretation. That's basically the case configuration and basic layout, and then you get into things like, well, how big? This number here then further defines that. So this is a 650 CFM carburetor. It's vacuum secondaries. I've been schooled repeatedly that this is the vacuum actuator for it. It's got electric choke, which is what this job is, and that's kind of what we got going on. So other than just figuring out what it is and getting a new air cleaner for it, nothing more to do here. Now let's talk about some more about the fluids. So this was flat empty when we opened it up the first time, and I put some fluid in it just for grins to see if it was going to drain out all over. It hasn't. What I put in is still there. I didn't fill it up. So we'll see what the wheel cylinders look like. I haven't pumped the brakes or anything yet. We'll do that when we get the wheels off. Oil. This is an interesting one. So the oil is really, really clean, like freshly changed clean. And some of what looks black here is actually on the stick itself. I don't know if you can see this, but somebody like filed or ran a wheel over the end of it from about my finger out. Not real sure why they did that, but they did. Based on the amount of oil this thing has leaked, I'm going to guess that they had it overfilled so that if I checked it when I got it, it would be filled. Or they just flat overfilled it and screwed up. Need a rag here in a minute. We never looked at the water. That's a grody ass cap for sure. Oh, and it's perfect. Hold on a minute. Have that there for the intake. Some grody in there. Very fresh looking. But yeah. Somebody's played nice with the fluids. You can take a look at the transmission here a second. Can't check it for full because it's stone cold and it's not running. Well, it looks good, and it doesn't smell burnt or anything funky, so it's about all we can tell right now. Man, we'll see what it does when it fires up and fills everything back up. So those are the fluids that are here to talk about. Let's take a look at the brakes. So this is indicative of the other side as well. Rotors are worn very nicely. That line right there has, I can't feel it with my finger. The brake pads are low to say the least. But you know, not real horribly rusty, not too nasty. Doesn't appear that this has been lubed in a while, based on the fact there's no fresh grease. I'm gonna guess that the shock, this is the stud stop, the shock, I'm gonna guess that is, they're not old shocks. However, I've got a full set of shocks coming because this car bounces like the dickens. This is a new brake line. It's still got the paper sticker on it, and it looks like the rubber hose is new as well. So that's good. One of the advantages of having more than one of these cars is if I pull those shocks and they still feel good, I got another car that needs them worse. Let's look at the back a minute. Man, I'll take that. No hammering necessary. Shed a little more light on the subject, but yeah, got plenty of pad left. They're a little dirty, but really I'm not going to touch them. They're dry, and that looks good. Let's check the other side. Well, that was a pain in the ass. Wouldn't come off. I think the black paint they sprayed on here glued this thing to the hub, but I took a torch to it and head her up, and away she went. Alright, so basically same story here. Same amount of pad. Everything's dry. Not gonna screw with it. In fact, I'm not even gonna take a blowgun to it and put this shit all over the shop. The rotor, we didn't look at the other side together, but I can tell you it looked just like this one, which is really good. No scarring, no nothing. So aside from bleeding the brakes and making sure they're bled down and, well, full, not much to do on the brakes here. So lucky me. I got all the wheels and tires off. Let's talk about the tires a minute. Unusual for the dollar I spend on these vehicles. It has 4 matching tires. These are all Chinese made hand cooks. Just a real generic tire with an even more generic tire tread. Looks to me like they rotated the rears to the fronts. And I say that because that one came off the front and this one came off the rear, and you can see it's a little more worn on the edges down in here like it was previously the front. Get some drywall cracking, It's got some cracking and stuff like that, which brings you to the what is the date code on them. So I deciphered the date code. It was on the back. So the last 4 digits here, the first 2 represent the week of the year, and the last 2 the year since 2000. So this is the 40th week, 2007. So about October. Making these tires about 14 years old. I guess if I had to get somewhere with them, I wouldn't hesitate, but yeah, they're gonna go away pretty quick. To continue the theme of exploration, let's just randomly take out a spark plug or 2. There we go. The wires look really nice. They don't look old at all. A little dirty, so they've probably been on here a year or so, but that's about it. So that's the, let's see, I think this is 1, yeah. Yes, this is 1. Doesn't look bad. Not oily. I don't know how to read them. I just know what crappy looks like. A little oil around the base, but other than that, it looks pretty good. Let's try another one. Well, there's 3 and 5. They look as good as 1. No, I'm not going to get 7 just because, well, these 3 look good. But if there's an easy one, I'll grab on the other side and just double check it. Otherwise, I think all indications are don't do anything. Well, I checked a couple of spark plugs on this side and they look exactly the same. So I'm pretty pleased with that. And guess what? I found how Sparky got its name. I'd say that's problematic. This is the number 8 spark plug wire. It was pulled tight. It's a little short bastard, which you would think is correct, but it was pulled tight back in there, right up against the exhaust manifold. And apparently in that cold, it got crispy and blew itself apart. So, got to find a spark plug wire. Way back a long time ago, I had a 93 Mustang GT, the last of the Fox body style. It was white. And I put a set of Taylor wires on it that were white. Same color as Sparky, as a matter of fact. And just so happens that I bought a second set just before a car show and put them on, because as you can imagine, white wires get dirty. And I never got rid of the old set. Holy crap, these wires are way too damn long. Yes, I got enough wire down here to do an apartment building. So I still had them. I went out and found them, and she's got one white wire now. And it's long enough to stay out of the way. I think I'm going to order another set of those. I like them. They've got 45-degree boots on them. No, that problem's at least fixed for now. Look, found another one. That was the number 1 cylinder. Looks like it got hot and did something. So the manifold that's on that car is from a different era, because it's got an O2 sensor in it. And these wires are all way too long and they're laying against stuff. So I've just continued to pick away at these Taylor wires, which I know have maybe 1,000 miles on them. And one whole side of Sparky's now white. This is a theme. While I was messing around with the spark plug wires, still trying to get them where I wanted, I discovered this. Yeah, that's the bottom of the heater box. She's got a big hole in it. Probably when they were cramming the exhaust in or something, somebody screwed up. And that is a huge piece, but that also means it's pulling in air out of the... It's on the air conditioning side, it looks like. No, it's not. It's the heater side. Anyways, that means that it's pulling air in out of the engine compartment and any fumes and shit like that. So I got to figure out how to fix that or replace that part in fairly short order. Crap. Well, even though I figured out that the shower of sparks from Sparky was that plug wire, I had already gotten new battery cables, which got rid of that ugly one down here on the positive. It was one of those clamp-on jobs. So I got those put in. While I was down there, I found a always hot positive wire that was getting ready to melt in half down by the exhaust. So spent a little time, got that squared away, and it won't be an issue. Alright, next on the agenda, we're going to check the fuel pressure, because the items that come after this are going to prevent me from running the car for a while. So I bodged together a little T-fitting and stuff so that I could get the gauge in line. It's just a Harbor Freight fuel pressure and vacuum gauge. What we're looking for is less than 7, according to the Holley manual. 5 to 7 psi is what we want. That's pretty much what I thought. Stock fuel pump put out about 9 psi. This one's sort of bounced between 8.5 and 9.5 psi. And that is way too much for the carburetor, making it do weird things when you accelerate, etc. So on the list will go a lower pressure fuel pump. I could put in a fuel pressure regulator, but I just as soon replace the pump, know it's doing it right, knowing it's new, and be done with it. A few extra bucks, but I'm alright with that. We're going to drive this car a little bit. While she's running, let's see if the charging whirler is putting out. All right, we got the fuel pump off Sparky. You can Google that number there, but this is a 9.5 PSI pump, so that's no bueno. It's actually, I think, for like an S10 or something like that. They bent things around to, you know, try and aim them right. I'm surprised it didn't leak with all of that, but anyways. So what we're throwing on is this Chinesium one that was on sale from Speedway Motors. This one here does 5.5 to 7 or 6 to 7 PSI, which is what the Holleys and the Edelbrocks that I use require. Anyways, I'll throw this on. I'll bring you back when it's done. Fuel pump is Schmidt plumbed in. I mean, it's sanitary enough, but it's not how it's going to be in the end. I threw AN line up to the carburetor, but I've left this T in place just so we can see the lower pressure now on the fuel pressure gauge. So we'll start it up here a second and see how it goes, and then I'll take that T out of the mix and drive it out of the garage. Alright, well that's annoying as piss because it's got the same problem. So this fuel pump from Speedway Motors, no hate there, is supposed to max out at 7 PSI. And as you can see, even after the motor's off, we're almost at 9. So the carburetor's still getting almost 2 PSI or more than it should, which is a lot of why it stumbles and falls on its face. So my choices are I get rid of this fuel pump, and oh, by the way, I bought one for the new motor, or I put in a fuel pressure regulator, in which case I wouldn't have had to have done any of this. Could have left the old fuel pump in. So pretty annoyed, but I guess that's the way it goes. I'll make my feelings known with Speedway Motors on this product and see what they have to say. Yeah, hey bud. Ooh, that's dark in there. Well, next thing we're going to attack is the fuel gauge that reads perpetually full. Probably the sending unit. Gosh, I hope it's not in the dash. We'll check out back first. If the problem was in the sending unit in the tank, shorting that wire out to ground, which I did and tried a couple different locations, would have made the gas gauge read empty, and the gas gauge isn't moving at all. So that leaves a couple of things it could be, both of which mean I got to tear apart the dash to figure it out. Well, that could be the problem right there. Is it focusing? So for whatever reason, mostly because I was lazy, I started following the wire loom back, you know, just to see if there was anything obvious, because you can see where people have, you know, basically wire nutted their life away. And this is the wire loom that includes the red wire, or pink, whatever color, that goes back to the gauge. And I noticed that it had been, you know, wore out right here, and this holder was broke, and there's some tape on it. I'm like, oh, look, they taped this up, whatever the hell this is. And I opened it up. Sure enough, they taped up the pink one because it got destroyed. And the other ones seem to have gotten saved miraculously. Yeah. So let's splice in a piece. There's almost nothing here. I mean, there's like one strand, maybe. Not even really that. Huh. Yeah, 2 strands. Well, nothing I can do but try. This would be way better than pulling the dash. I have the buggered up wires fixed now. It was easiest to just pull this whole section of wiring harness out. One plug, I think it's this end, goes into a receptacle in the back of the passenger compartment, and this is the part where the wiring harness that goes across the back of the car plugs in. So you remove the two and a couple of clips like these, which are what failed to start with, and the whole wire comes out. I'm not going to put it back in with these. I don't have any. I'm going to use what's effectively a zip tie on one of these pushing connectors. So I'll push those into the hole. The rest of it's a zip tie. As far as the repair goes, you can see I cut out quite a bit of wire, and the reason I did that is I was looking for, I kept cutting back as far as I could, looking for a place where the wire wasn't corroded. When you get a hole in insulation like that, wire insulation, corrosion will work back into it. So I went back quite a ways. I think a couple of the connectors are, not connectors, but solder joints are here, and then all the way back around to here. I did it on both wires that were rubbed raw from the tire. Those are now soldered together, and then I used shrink tubing that has got, it's kind of more of a marine application stuff, but it has internal adhesive in it, which not only bonds the wire's insulation, but also seals it. And then covered it in what is notoriously this crappy plastic loom. This is factory stuff here back in that spot, but it was full of dirt. So not only did I put that on it, I then wrapped it with this Tessa tape. This is a cloth type tape, and yeah, I overkilled it. I did the whole thing, but anyways, it's done now. Ready to go back in the car. All tucked back in. Well, we're on the right track because we're now reading below full. So that tells me that there's at least a wire hooked up to the back of the gauge, and the gauge is trying to work. It's dropping slowly, which I would kind of expect because you wouldn't want it bouncing around every time the tank sloshed, but it seems to have kind of died out right here. So I'm going to try something else. Well, fuel pump's still on the list. Gas gauge, still on the list. Peanut gallery over there made me take the check marks off. Anyways, bottom line is, as you saw, the fuel pressure is still way too high. Same plan. See about how willing the supplier is to replace it, or put a regulator in, or change the pump. Yeah, more on that. The tank gauge is, I plugged the wiring harness back in, and I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's back to being pinned at absolute full. So that must mean it's a two-part problem. I was a little afraid of that. Two-part being the sending unit is probably equally as foobar. So I'll probably go down that route with a little more checking, see what might be going on there. On the, gosh, we really wish we could fix it kind of affair, need to get the seats out of the OG Gangster recline position. If anybody knows how the seat adjustment backwise works, we took a look at it, cursory look, and we don't get it. So if you could, if you know or have a link to a good explanation, put that down in the doobly-doo. I would appreciate it. In the meantime, she's at least back together enough that I can take it and get the title work done on it, and we'll take another go around after that. Thanks for watching, everybody. See ya.